The end is nigh. Okay. Is the end nigh? I have no idea. Is it a scary time for senior software engineers? Yes, it is. And why is that? It's because AI can and will replace you. I know I was replaced by AI myself. People say, okay, hold up. What do you mean you were replaced by AI? I was in a position to be replaced by a prompt engineer, and that's never happened to me before in my life. As a founding engineer of a company that I was working for, you're always the last one to go. And it's true because startups, they often run out of money, usually after about 2 years. It's about a 2 year running ramp, and then pooh, either you're making it or you're not. And especially with Midwest startups. Midwest startups are a little bit different than California because they don't start off with like millions of dollars of VC capital. They start off with like maybe $1 or $2 million, and that's it. It's almost like a bunch of angels getting together and saying, "Here's a little bit of play money, see if you can do something with it." Right. So I was working for a startup as a founding engineer, and there was a point. We came to a point where I wanted to bring on another front end person, but instead of a traditional front end engineer, because I'm finding a lot of the front end guys were being very against using AI. They didn't want to use it because they're kind of like, oh, it's not good enough. It produces crap code. Well, I had been a real big fan of AI, and it still am actually, the entire time. And I wanted to, I was seeing all these advances in prompt engineering, I wanted to have a front end developer come on board who actually was pretty good at that stuff. Somebody who knew how to utilize the latest tools and didn't spend their whole day like tweaking things by hand, because that's just not the way it's going to have to be done in the future. And I'm sorry if you are a front end engineer and you're used to taking like 2 weeks to produce a web page or something and going through and making everything pixel perfect. Times are changing. I encouraged the hire of this particular individual, and he was a prompt engineer. He wanted to be a software engineer, and I think he actually, it was kind of a beef when we were to hire him as a prompt engineer. He wanted the title software engineer. But he'd worked traditionally as like a project manager. He'd messed around with websites and stuff before, and he'd spent the last 2 years working at an advertising agency, building up his skills. And he had actually produced some stuff with prompt engineering. In fact, he was the most adept prompt engineer that I had known in person. I had known personally, and so I'm like, "Look, yeah, this guy would be perfect. Bring him on. I'll hand over some of the front end stuff to him." Of course, I also, since he was talented, I said, "Hey, look, let's see what else you can do." He could do the backend tasks. I mean, it was a Next.js stack. It's not that complicated. It's all JavaScript, right? You only need to know one programming language necessarily. Of course, you need to know CSS and HTML, or at least you used to need to know. You can kind of fake it till you make it these days. So this person made less money than me considerably, and it was towards the end of the startup lifetime, and they said, "Hey, guess what?" And they didn't say it so many ways, but in certain ways, we went about letting me know that it was time for me to move on. So I wasn't the last one to go. I'd always been the last one to go in previous iterations. Now this time around, I was the guy getting let go. Now, why do I say that that means that AI replaced me? Because this never would have happened. I worked with lots of startups in the past. I built them from the ground up. And you know what happens? You get to a point where if it's succeeding, they'll either try to hire you full time, well, if you're working as a contractor, which is the way I used to do it, or they will it'll shut down because there's no money, right? And so you couldn't let the founding engineer go because he's the guy who knew everything, right? I mean, I never took abuse of that power. I never said, okay, let's be honest. I mean, was I a little bit of a diva at times? I could be. I tried not to be. My philosophy is, just especially over the last few years, is like provide value and don't be a pain in the ass. Those are my two leading philosophies on how to be a successful engineer, because people don't want to work with somebody who's an asshole. So I really do try to get along with everyone. But I mean, I'm also, if you're the one that's building technology, you have to push back at times and say, no, we can't deliver this feature right now, because if we do that, we're not going to be able to finish the other feature. Just all the kind of regular kind of trade-offs of, right? The iron triangle for those of us who've been around for a while. But I wouldn't have been let go. You will not let go the founding engineer. But this prompt engineer proved that he could do my job. He proved it. He really could do my job. Now, after I left the company, I thought to myself, yeah, well, they'll be sorry. They're going to get some kind of technical pickle, and he's not going to find his way out of it. But you know what? With prompt engineering, he really has been able to find his way out of pickles. And honestly, I think that was just ego talking. My ego wants to say, I spent decades now as a software engineer learning all the ins and outs of all of these different programming languages. Many of them, I'm very versatile. I work in relational databases. I work in NoSQL databases. I can model systems from scratch. I can do enterprise software. I can do desktop applications, though I haven't done that in a while. It's all been web-based and the web-based stack for the last decade plus, for the most part. But you know what? It's not true. He could do the job. I mean, the prompt engineer was able to come in and do the job, and it's really just arrogance and ego on my part to believe that I couldn't be replaced. What does this mean for me? What does it mean for you as a senior software engineer? It may mean that you're out of a job, because if they can pay somebody half as much as you to do your job, they're going to do it. It makes sense. It makes economic sense, right? Never forget that businesses only exist to make money. It's not a social program. It's not some way to give you comfort throughout the years. It's a way to make money. And ultimately, the guys who are making the money, either the investors or the owners of the company, are going to be looking out for that, number one. And if they can get it done cheaper, they're going to get it done cheaper. If they don't have to pay you a high six-figure salary, they're not going to pay you. They're going to pay somebody less than six figures. They're going to pay someone whatever they can get away with. And if they can completely eliminate software engineering positions altogether and just have folks do that through prompt engineering, they're going to do it. I promise you, I hear a lot of developers going, oh, well, yeah, but I've seen this stuff. Look at this example of what I was doing with a prompt and how ridiculous the output was. You're not really doing it right. You haven't really learned the skills yet on how to basically direct your prompt engineering in such a way to get the job done, because you really can. And I understand the limits. I've pushed the limits of this. I've been using prompt engineering myself lately as my primary programming language. And there comes a point where you have this rapid advance of productivity, followed by lots of confusion if you don't manage it very carefully. And at that point, that's whenever your actual software engineering skills have to kick back in and be like, oh, I know how to use the debugger. I know how to track this down. I know how to actually go through the code line by line. And because that's the way senior software engineers have been writing code for the last, well, their whole careers, right? And so there is still going to be a place for those folks. And I think that my place will still come. Like right now, it's a very tough job market. I have applied through LinkedIn on so many of these jobs, and either they want to pay me too little compared to what I was making before. This may be the new economic reality for you and me. Or they just don't even call me back, or they put me through a series of interviews, and it's the traditional old school thing, right? Where I call it old school. If you're hiring people by like going through 2 or 3 or 4 tiers of interviews, and then at some point you sit down with the developers and they ask you all the hardest gotcha questions, and if you're not like a elite code expert or you haven't tried to memorize things, or actually if you're just like me, and a generalist, meaning that you may not off the top of your head know the answer to some question you might get asked during a technical interview, they will discount the whole summation of your experience. It doesn't matter to them how many systems you've built. It doesn't matter how many have been successful. It really doesn't matter as long as in that interview you answer all the questions correctly, right? That's how you get to the top. And you're competing with how many people? I mean, I'm seeing that as I apply for these jobs and positions I'm interested in, they're like, 500 people have applied today. 1,200 people have already applied for this position. Now, I've also been on the other side of that, the hiring manager. And you know what you do when you have so many, you have just that volume of applications? You don't read them all, for one. You go through looking for particular keywords, maybe. If you want to be really, a lot of people sort it by education, which means that the guys with the doctorates are definitely going to get it over me, because I'm very on the formal education side. I didn't go as far because I was hired into the industry when it was hot. Remember when the industry was hot and they would hire you right out of school before you even finished your degree? Well, I did, because I was there. I did that. So the AI apocalypse is definitely upon us. But it doesn't have to be an apocalypse, and I'm not sure that it will be. I just think that everyone in my position, if you're a senior software engineer, it's time to rethink. First of all, if you've got a position, you better be nice. Try to hold on to it as long as you can, because there are still slower companies. There are companies who are still stuck in their ways. You know how enterprise is. It moves at the speed of molasses. It's very, very slow to change. And that means that somewhere out there's a room full of 10 developers working on sprints and producing 20 lines of code and 120 lines of unit test each sprint, and pulling in good 6-figure salaries for that. Time will come very quickly when they will realize they probably need only one of those developers to keep to produce the same output of the entire team if they're not using AI. And the teams that are using AI but not officially, well, those guys are just now working, 20 minutes a day or an hour a day, but still being paid for 8 hours. You know that you're doing it. Yeah, I know that you know that you're doing it. So it's going to be a really difficult time. There's going to be a lot of change, lots of transition. And what are we going to do about this? I have no idea. But I know that you need to probably diversify. Some of you folks need to get out there and learn masonry and construction. I mean, this is crazy. I hate to say that, but it's true. The jobs that AI will not take immediately will be the jobs, the services industry jobs. And you know what? You can make great money in the services industry. If you're willing to be a plumber, you can probably continue to make a six-figure salary. There are other career trajectories. Now, if you're a senior software engineer like me who's been doing this for 25 years, you could be tempted to say, hey, it's time to just hang up my hat and retire early. Lucky you if you really were a great financial planner and you're in a good position to do that. I need to keep working for another decade, and I bet a lot of you need to keep working for another decade. So let's figure out what to do together. By the way, I have a website, nojob.dev, that was designed for folks who are in a position like that I'm in, software engineers who are now currently out of work. It's a place where we can talk about strategies for how to work things out going forward, how to basically own our own businesses. There are new profit sharing models that we could be discussing. Of course, we could just have these discussions anywhere like Reddit, but that's a big corporation and it's just another big giant entity. Why don't we start some new communities? We need to break away from the Silicon Valley monoliths, the big mega tech. Look, this tech is available for all of us to use. You should be using prompt engineering today to be building the kinds of AI tools that put you into a position of power for tomorrow. That's what I'll be doing. And in the meantime, I'll probably be doing contract work, sweeping in and cleaning up messes where prompt engineers think they can build it, but once it gets complicated, they're not sure where to go from there. And that's when I'll come in and sweep it up. I'm also available as a consultant. I'm available to come into your business and kind of show you the ways, show you how you can streamline what you're doing with AI. It's such a weird position to be in, right? I'm a victim of AI, and yet now I'm pivoting to try to take advantage of the fact that I have a good deep knowledge of AI and all those classic software engineering skills, and I could teach you how to utilize the same technology that's killing us. I'm fascinated by AI, and yet it's really going to hurt me. It's going to hurt you too, unless we figure out a way to actually take some of that power back from big tech and apply it to our own lives so that we can be comfortable as we have been over the last 20 years.